Hello, church. Welcome to 1 Kings chapter 5, 6, and 7. We're back into this book of Kings, back into the story of Solomon and how he is making preparations now to build the temple and his palace and getting to work in this. As we begin reading in chapter 5, one thing that really strikes me is verse 6, when Solomon says that he is offering to pay. He's got a good relationship. His dad even David had a great relationship with Hiram, king of Tyre, and Solomon continues that good relationship and wants to put in an order for cedar logs. And when he does, he offers to pay that king of Tyre, I'm going to pay you for your men, whatever wages you set. Almost seems like a blank check in that relationship that is a trustworthy relationship, and it goes both ways. But that generosity or thought of others in the context of business is beautiful. When you sit around a fire sometime and hear your friends telling stories about their business transactions, do their stories revolve around what a great deal they got? They dickered that seller right down to strangling them out of every penny, and then they come away and their story is all about what a good deal they got? Do you realize that, if I'm just really blunt, sometimes we, under the guise of good stewardship, completely have no love for the other person in a business dealing? Church, if that happens in the context of a Christian's life, that actually isn't right. Just as an example, in Philippians 2 verse 4, our attitude should be to consider others better than ourselves in humility. And there's no time, even in business, for a Christian that should not be occurring. And Jesus said in Matthew 5, he said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. In other words, you should be true to your word. If it's a handshake deal, that's the same to a Christian as if they had signed their name on the bottom of a page. Church, are we trustworthy in our business dealings, and do we consider others better than ourselves in that dealing? If you would have sat around with Solomon after hearing about this business deal, I think you would have heard stories not about the great deal he was getting, but about the quality of what he bought, the great relationship he had with that person, and so on. That would sound far more like Jesus than about somebody who was horribly good at squeezing out pennies from somebody else. So we could ask this question: Jesus, do my business dealings reflect you and your perfect character? Great question to ask the Lord. Then you'll notice that in chapter 6 and 7, Solomon is building this temple and sparing zero expense. Do you realize how much gold is everywhere? These cedar beams and planks and all the carvings and the intricate work and the pillars and the bronze it is incredible detail. The stones have been chiseled out over there and brought. There's not even sound of hammers and chisels on the site, and just this incredible detail is being given and sparing zero expense. That actually only makes sense if you think about that in the context of how we ought to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, which according to Jesus is the greatest commandment in Mark chapter 12. And we ought to, if it makes sense then that if Solomon was given the task of building a temple, that if he's going to love the Lord, his God, with all of his heart and soul, mind, and strength, this is what's going to come out, sparing no expense. We can easily apply that to our lives. Are you a Sunday school teacher? Have that same attitude towards teaching your class. Are you a parent? Have that same attitude towards parenting your kids, or whoever you are being allowed to disciple. Do we serve God by sparing no expense? A great question to ask the Lord. Lord, do I serve you in that same way and spare no expense in my serving of you? Great question to ask the Lord. And then I also love chapter 6, verse 11 and 12. But then we have this solemn reminder that God says to Solomon, this is your participation in enjoying favor with me and my favor upon the Israelites is if you obey. It actually sounds very similar to what Jesus said in John 15 to his disciples. If you love me, you will obey. And this is a great reminder that we cannot cover up disobedience with just putting more money into the offering plate. While we should serve God and spare no expense, we must come back to recognizing that obedience is our top priority. And so you could even ask Jesus that question: Jesus, is obeying you my top priority? And then if we get into chapter 7, what I love here is that other than this one guy from Tyre named Huram in chapter 7 verse 13, think about how many people are working on this temple. And in the scriptures here, it says Solomon builds his temple. But in reality, I don't think Solomon was chiseling very many stones. I don't think he was carving very many things out of gold or laying out the gold or filling a mold or creating a mold. He probably was not one of those farmers who was part of this business deal in providing the food and so on for the trade. And all of that, all of those intricate things were being done by countless people who were busy working, building this temple. And we might be in a place like that, where maybe we are serving in a place where we have not been mentioned by name, and we might sometimes even feel unappreciated. But I want to point out something. Jesus actually values when we are willing to work without getting public recognition. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6 that if you get public recognition, you've just received your reward. But if you work for Jesus without that, and just regardless of whether or not you get public recognition, and just serve him with all of your heart, you have not only are you going to be rewarded by Jesus, but that reward will carry with you for all of eternity. And we need to remember that Hebrews chapter 6 says that God is not unjust and he will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you help his people and continue to help them. And so you could ask the Lord this question: Jesus, would you please fill me with the desire to serve you, whether I am recognized or not? And I know that's not a question, but a great thing to talk about with Jesus. Enjoy your day with him.